Listen, making the amends to the person we can't stand is like kissing a baby on the head compared to what alcohol will do to us if we fall back into active alcoholism. So sometimes you have to say to yourself, there's two avenues I can take. Avoid the amends and die a drunken alcoholic death, make the amends and live a spiritual life.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Alas, we meet again. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas, on this here episode number 379 of Sober Speak. That was the voice of Mr. Chris S. on the beginning of this episode here, and you are going to hear so much more from Chris in just a moment. But first things first, this episode is made possible by Todd, Michelle, Kurt, and Anonymous. And so you ask yourself, what exactly did Todd, Michelle, Kurt, and Anonymous do? Well, they swung by our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Todd, Michelle, Kurt, and Anonymous. This here episode is coming right out to youans. So we're like almost midway through January now when you're listening to this. In fact, I think we're a little past. I think it's going to be released on January 17th of 2025. I hope your new year is off to a safe and sober, for those of you who need to be sober, start. And we are so glad that you have joined us here. I don't know, my brain's just been going off with all kinds of creative ideas this afternoon, and hopefully I'll be able to implement those throughout this new year. I just, like doing this podcast, it's fun. It just, I don't know, it just keeps me going. I love all the comments. We get, every once in a while, we get, not so great comments, either social media or via email or via wherever from various people. But overall, the comments are great and they keep me going. And it helps me to know that there are individuals out there that are somehow being helped, being aided, improving their spiritual life, helping them to stay sober through my silly little podcast here and the guests that we bring in. And I'm just, I feel fortunate as can be today. And so I have a lot of episodes in the can, as they call it already. And I can't wait to release those to you. I can only get to one a week just because of my work schedule and some other things. But you can look forward to David G, Jimmy D, and many other people that I have coming up here in the new year. And I'm so glad that you have joined us today. All right. So where are we? This one right here you were about to listen to is Mr. Chris S of Blairstown, New Jersey, on steps 8 and 9 of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you've been listening to this podcast for any time, by the way, if you're new here, we are so glad you have joined us. I'm just ecstatic that you have. And if you've been listening for a while, we're glad you're here as well. But anyway, Chris S. has been on the podcast many times before. He's basically, we've talked about his story. And Chris is a step speaker, as they call him. He's a circuit speaker. And right now we are going through steps 8 and 9 of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you want to listen to the rest of Chris's episodes, just give me a shout out, John John at soberspeak.com. And I can tell you some easy ways to access those. You can just look for Chris S on SoberSpeak. But nonetheless, in this episode, Chris's pups make their first appearance on SoberSpeak. I'm so glad we could hear from his puppies. He talks about how steps 8 and 9 help to calm down our alcoholism. Isn't that a great way to put it? He talks about something he calls applied experiential spirituality and what that means. He discusses the, quote, holy now, unquote. I love that term. Chris talks about how he uses index cards with the guys he sponsors for steps 8 and 9. Some of you have heard of that before, but he goes into detail here about it. He also says, he talks about the breathing meditation he does prior to making an amends to help calm him down. He describes the spiritual life as a, quote, hero's journey. I also love that term. He's just got the best phrases, terms. He talks about the 3 questions that he asks the person he is addressing to at the end of an amends. You're going to want to hear that. We talk about how power and freedom are the essence of steps 8 and 9 and much, much more. This one is chock full of nuts. I know you're going to want to listen into this, the entire thing, maybe even back it up and take some notes there. And as always, I will have plenty, listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy Chris S. Okay, everybody. So we are back once again with Mr. Chris S. And we are continuing our slow walk through the steps here. And Chris, first things first, sir, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Give your on and about sobriety date, if you would, when you're able to. And then tell people where you live in this great land of ours, and then I'll set it up a little bit more for you, okay?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, John. My name is Chris, and I am an Alcoholics Anonymous member in good standing. My sobriety date is on or around December 28th, 1989. I could be off a day or two. It was... it was kind of a fuzzy time, but I've been able to stay separated from alcohol from that period of time until now. And I live in a little town called Blairstown, New Jersey, the northwestern part of the state.
So you are going to be coming up on, I'm assuming I'll have this out before you, but you're going to come up on 36 years now. Is that right?
35 in December. And
35.
I'm insisting that my wife put a big party together for that.
There you go. And I can't remember we talked about this before. Is your wife one of us as well?
She's dabbled with Al-Anon, but she's like normal. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't have a lot of the damage that happens with living with an alcoholic. The first alcoholic she lived with was me, and I was 20 years sober at the time. So there hasn't been a lot of damage done. And I would just say that she's very normal in a lot of different ways. But she's dabbled with Al-Anon just just because I'm still not the easiest person to deal with. You know what I mean? Like you can always use some extra tools in your toolkit dealing with alcoholics, even if they're a long time sober.
I get it. Um, and right before we started here, I don't know if that pooch has ever made an appearance on our recordings before, but I saw the little pooch walking around. Who's the pooch?
Yeah, well, I've got two dogs here. That's Grady, and I've got Maya in the cage here. Normally, my wife is home when I'm doing podcasts or Zooms or whatever, and she's sequestered the dogs in a bedroom and keeps them quiet. Like she's not here right now, so I'm kind of crossing my fingers that they don't cause any trouble. But I know how good of an editor you are, so if there's an errant bark or something like that, yeah, you'll be able to take care of it.
Yeah, but I think sometimes it's really it's kind of nice to have those like my dog comes by every one makes some noise, or when my family members pop into the room when I'm recording, and I just leave it in there. I think it kind of adds to the realness of the situation, if you will. So all right.
That brings something to mind that I'm going to interject. So
Yeah.
I was in a meeting one time and there was a speaker speaking, and all of a sudden a baby starts crying from the back, and some people start to tussle around like it's like, and the speaker goes, wait, folks, that is the sound of families healing.
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Before, I have two kids, and maybe, and I've changed a lot. I just, by God's grace, passed 35 years sober. May 29th of this year. Yeah. Oh, there goes the dog. No, I love it. Right on cue.
Sorry.
uh, but, I don't know if I would have seen it the same way when I was first sober. I don't think I was as patient with kids, and I don't think as I realized what it meant for like a single mother to bring, or a single dad or whatever, to bring their baby to the meeting and be able to sit there and get a little respite from what's going on in their world. But I completely agree.
Yeah. All are welcome.
All right. Yeah. All right. So we are on. We've gone through all that. We did your story. We've gone through the steps, and now we are. Last time we left off was steps 6 and 7. We're going to try our best to get through steps 8 and 9 today. So why don't we go ahead and start there? So, Chris, I'm just going to kind of tee you up. Step 8: made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So, what comes to mind for you when you hear that step?
I was thinking about this particular show for a couple of days now, and I've done some contemplation on it, right? And I want to start with this, that we need to be able to calm our alcoholism, to be able to maintain our spiritual condition, right? So what do I mean by that? Calm my alcoholism. So the problem centers in my mind, and of alcoholism centers in my mind, and there's certain things, certain belief systems, certain emotional states, certain spiritual uncomfortability or whatever, that make me prey to the obsession of the mind, which can lead me to drink. So when Bill says, we have a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition, the way I look at it is my emotional and my spiritual self needs to be calmed down a little bit. Now, when I look at the 12 steps, I look at step 3, make a decision to live this life of spirituality. Really, what I'm doing in step 3 is I'm making a decision to engage in applied experiential spirituality. What do I mean by that? Well, applied means actually doing it. Experiential means experiencing the results of actually doing it. And that leads me into spirituality, a life of spirituality. I misunderstood so many things before I experienced them, so I've got to make a decision to experience this stuff. In step 4, I put together a list of the grosser manifestations of self that have defeated me, like resentment and self-centered fear and guilt and shame and remorse and all that kind of stuff. I share that with someone. I become willing to engage the spirit in their removal or the calming of the structural damage that lives within me. And then I humbly ask God to remove those impediments to the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Now then,
I want to make sure I pause on that term just here real quick because I'm kind of still soaking it in myself. You said applied experiential spirituality, right? I love that because it kind of it wraps up what we're trying to do. Just those three components there. I think it's just a great way to phrase it. And so I just wanted to point that out.
it's the best way I can describe the totality of the 12-step experience. You know what I mean? And so why do we need that? We need that to calm our alcoholism. And what is our alcoholism? I'll give you a few for instances. Why are all these people driving like idiots? My family just doesn't understand me. Just they're all crazy. Every woman I go out with, they're all crazy. My boss, you wouldn't believe my boss. He's like unreasonable. He's a moron. That is my alcoholism. Whether I want to call it life on life's terms or just my personality, that's misrepresenting what it is. That's my
I
alcohol.
have to admit, right there when you said that, we were talking, and I was looking at you, and you were saying that phrase when you said "calm our alcoholism." I took a deep breath, and I don't know. I was able to experience it, and I know exactly what you mean.
So I drank alcohol for that. It says we like the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks we see others taking with impunity. What's wrong with me? So I need that sense of ease and comfort. I'm not going to survive alcoholism without it. I'm not going to stay sober without it, because the time and the place will come and the obsessional mind will creep in. It'll say, look, Chris, you need a break. All this recovery stuff is fine, but you need a vacation from the world, the hostile universe. And that insane thought will lead to a drink. So for want of a better description, let's look at the applied experiential spirituality as something that settles us more into the now, more into the holy now, where there really isn't a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. John, I used to suffer from things that weren't happening. That's what I would suffer from. They weren't happening, but it'd be something in the past, or it'd be anxiety about the future. All that stuff has to be calmed down. And this leads us to step 8. Step 8 is coming to terms with the damage I have done and the harms that I have caused, and becoming willing to set those right. Why? Because my spirit demands it. I must set these things right so that all will be well in Chris's world. You know what I mean? And so I become willing. It says here, we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. So most of the 8-step list comes off of the 4-step. but there's some things that you can add. Maybe if there was no resentments or no anxiety or fear involved or no sexual stuff involved, you can add. I like my guys to use index cards. So each specific amends, they do an index card and they write down the person or institution. They write down a clear harm. So I don't let them get away with, well, I was always a jerk to them. That's too broad. That's not specific. I want you to put the harm down, because a lot of times we make up these stories in our head. We make these stories up our head. And many times as we're doing our amends cards, just like as we're doing our 4-step, we start to see that some of these things are fancied and not real. You know, and so why do you have to be clear on the harm? Because you're going to be approaching this person, and it's just not going to be good enough to say, I'm sorry I was such a jerk. No, you need to say, I was wrong for parking on your cat. Or whatever the harm is. You know what I mean? And then getting upset at you because you were yelling at me. I mean, get real clear with the harm. Now we go back through our lives with this stuff. So on that card, you need to put contact information. And on the back of the card, what I like to do is I like to meet with my sponsees before they make any amends. And we get clear on, number one, the approach. How do you approach the person or institution? And number two, what are you going to say? What is this amends going to look like? And we both really look deeply to see that this amends is not going to make things worse. You know what I'm saying? Like harm other people or make things worse. Like you don't go knock on somebody's door and say, I'm really sorry about, the sex harms I caused you, while their husband is standing behind them. It's common sense that you don't cause additional harm. So that's really what the 8-step is for me. Now, some of these I'm going to be willing to do tomorrow. I'm going to be willing to make amends to my mother tomorrow, but that guy that I worked for in 1973, I don't want to have anything to do with that guy ever again. So there's going to be some prayer work that's going to be needed. There's going to be some serious prayer work. How do you know, John, how do you know when you're ready to make these amends? You hear the knock on the door as you're approaching somebody. That's how you know. So there's been many times that I've sat in a car becoming willing. I sat in a car and I've got an amends breathing meditation that I do, and I'll share it with you. And it's basically this: breathe in, God in, fear out, God in, fear out. And there's been many times I've had to use that because I didn't want to go knock on that door. It was going to go bad. I was going to look stupid, or he's going to call the police, or whatever excuse I would come up with for not doing that amends. Right. And after enough of that breathing meditation, God in, fear out, I would get out of the car and I'd go up and I'd knock on the door. And I'm telling you, there's no work that you do in the 12-step realm that has more direct impact on a calm spirituality in your life than amends. There's been 2 full set of amends that I've finished, every single one. Every single one. And I'll tell you this, the difference between having unfinished amends and having no unfinished amends is like the difference between night and day. And for the real alcoholic, the person who went really far down the scale and is gravely afflicted with alcoholism, it could be the difference between life and death. Having unfinished amends. So I've gone through a number of lists. I can tell you right now that there's no unfinished amends in my life right now that I haven't attempted. Now, there's been people I couldn't find. There's been people that are dead. I've written an honest letter and gone to their gravesite and buried the letter next to their stone. I've gone to a place that meant a lot to me and them, and read that letter and lit it on fire and, sent it up to heaven. I've done a lot of different things to be able to complete amends for people I could not find. And for institutions that no longer exist, I've written a letter, I've read it, and I've donated money I think that institution, would be happy me donating to, in their name. So I just don't believe today that there's no amends that I should be, there's no amends I should be unwilling to do unless it will make things worse or it will harm other people. So some of my great experiences. Here's the thing,
So let's go ahead and repeat that real quick because I think that's important. You said there are no amends that I should be unwilling to do
unless it'll make things worse or cause other people harm.
Very good.
I'll give you, for instance, this guy I was working with. I'll tell you the story. This guy I was working with. He went through a fifth step. He did a fifth step with me, and he was on fire. And he went home and he made direct amends to his wife without following my instruction. And this is what he said. He said, "Honey, I've got to be honest with you. There's 3 women at work that I've had an affair with in the last 5 years." And you know what she did? She beat the ever-loving hell out of him. He almost lost an eye. She was kicking him when he was down on the floor. It was terrible. And then she insisted on knowing who the women were. She got a hold of the women. She got a hold of the women's husbands. It made things, I talked to, he came to me with like a big patch over his eye saying, it didn't really go very well. I'm like, dude, you made things so much worse. We were supposed to go over your A-step cards. And so there's ways that we can really screw this up if we're not diligent. And there's warnings all throughout the book. If we've been wild, should we, if we've stepped out on the misses, should we be honest about it? Not always, we think, it says, I mean, there's great information in this book about what to do and how to do it. And if you're working with a sponsor, you're going to be able to avoid some of those mistakes. An experienced sponsor, make sure your sponsor has done amends, because it's very, very easy to find somebody in the rooms who will give you a pass on any amends you want to pass on. Because they've passed on it. You know what I mean? So find somebody with deep experience in these amends, because your spirituality is going to depend on it. This thing is, we've talked about this before, John. This thing is 100 miles deep. This spiritual life is 100 miles deep. You keep digging, you're going to keep finding gold. And I want all the gold I can get. So I'm going to do all the work that it's asking me to do. That's the decision I made in step 3. You know what I mean?
So you got step 8. You're talking about, making that list, right? And now you're kind of moving over into the amends area. And I do want to ask you one question real quick, because people do come across this on a consistent basis. That example that you just brought up, about not making more harm. So in a particular, and I know it's a case by case, mm-hmm. right? I don't think there's one full swoop answer, but with a guy like that who has had affairs on his wife, and you're going through the 8th step and the 9th step, how do you coach them? I mean, what would be the proper thing? Obviously, you don't go home right after your 5th step and just say, hey, to your wife, hey, I've been in an affair with 3 women at work, But how do you end up making amends in a case like that?
So the book says we admit in a general way that we've been wild if they know, and God willing, it won't happen again. Let's move forward in a spiritual manner. We're now going to be, asking God to direct our lives. So that's kind of basically what the book asks us to do in a situation like that. If they don't know, I think the book is telling us if the information is going to make them really sad or hurt them, we're not to share that. We're not to make things worse. Now here's the thing. Every once in a while, you'll be in a meeting, and it'll be the ninth step meeting, and somebody will say, "Well, I stole all this money, and I was talking with some other people, and for me to make this amends, it would harm me because I don't have a lot of money. So I'm
Huh.
not." I'm not going to make the amends. And what I tell everybody is, we are not others. Okay, others is others. It says to harm others. If it causes us harm or discomfort or inconvenience, or we can't buy that new Ferrari with the leather dashboard or whatever. That's just too bad. It's a sacrifice we need to make for our spiritual condition. So we're not others, but again, each case is specific.
It is
Uh,
right.
having
And I've seen people, throughout my time that have gone and, kind of made the full amends. They lay out completely everything, and it's not gone so good. And then I've seen other people who have done that and it goes pretty well, right? They had to do that in order to get past where they were. And I've also seen to where people kind of keep it undercover, and then they go about their life. And so I would just say that it's not a one size fits all. You look to a sponsor, you look to other people for guidance, you look to the book for guidance, and then you go into it with prayer, and every situation is a little bit different. So, do you agree with that?
I do. And again, this is a personal journey, right? So every once in a while, someone will ask me, "Well, what do you think I should?" It's very hard for me to tell you what you should do if I haven't been working with you. I don't want to just give you a quick answer on whether you should make that amends or not. I haven't even heard your fifth step. So this is where the virtue of sponsorship and placing yourself unreservedly under their care and direction for this spiritual process is important. And you need to pick the right sponsor, obviously, and this book, these are the basic sections that this book covers. The man we hate. So people we have had huge resentments to. Sorry, if we have harmed them along with that resentment, guess who we're going to have to talk to? Uh, Listen, making the amends to the person we can't stand is like kissing a baby on the head compared to what alcohol will do to us if we fall back into active alcoholism. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
so sometimes you have to say to yourself, there's two avenues I can take. Avoid the amends and die a drunken alcoholic death, make the amends and live a spiritual life. Those are your two choices. We want to be able to dodge and weave, but how do we know? Is it possible if we skip that amends, alcohol will go back in our body? We have to ask that question, and I don't want to know the answer. So it's not worth rolling those dice. So the sections of amends are the man we hate, uh, criminal amends, uh, amends stepping out on someone we're committed to. Um, there's people we cannot see, and it covers everything. There's money, criminal amends. how do we handle criminal amends or financial amends? And there's instructions in this chapter about the basic philosophy of approach and execution of the amends in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Page like 80 to 86 or something like that is where you find them.
Yeah, Chris, and it's said a lot, kind of flippantly in meetings, about how you will, we have this choice between choosing a spiritual life or, death and dying and all that sort of stuff. And, and it makes it sound like a joke and all that stuff. And I get that. However, it is, it's tougher than it looks.
Yeah.
Because, you're basically asking people to go and do breathing exercises in front of somebody's house and when you go knock on that door and do something that is incredibly uncomfortable. Many times, sometimes they're more, I don't know, you go back and you pay the $10 that you took from the store or whatever, but many times it's very, very uncomfortable. And I can see where people do struggle with that for sure.
And what they're struggling with is their alcoholism. Let's look at alcoholism as the self-consciousness, that toxic self-consciousness. What is making it difficult for you to do that amends? Your self-consciousness. Yeah, your fear, your anxiety, worrying about, things that aren't happening, like what's going to happen. There's 15 ways this could go wrong. So what you're up against your alcoholism. So this is a hero's journey. This recovery. It's drastic. It's drastic action. But if you had cancer and someone said, John, there's this drastic 12-step procedure, it's Sloan Kettering, and rarely have we seen a person who didn't recover from it. If they did the drastic 12-step procedure, you would sell your house, you'd sell your family, and you'd head for Sloan Kettering 100 miles an hour. But we're up against our self-consciousness because that is our alcoholism. And we want to play games, and we want to create scenarios in our head that don't exist to try to avoid a humbling experience. And the best way to combat alcoholism is head on. If my self-consciousness is really my problem, let's go head on. All right. And the best way to go head on it, I know of, is to make direct amends to the people and institutions that I've harmed.
Yeah. Whenever you hear, speakers out there who are, like circus speakers, even people such as yourself who are out there and you hear a lot about their turning points in their sobriety. So many times it was when they got out and made some of these amends and what the amends did for them and how that changed their lives and how pieces of them floated away once they actually made those amends.
I've got a current story that's in my mind right now today, because as soon as I get off of this show, I'm going to jump in my car and go to a train station and pick up my niece. Now, let me tell you about my niece. It's the 80s, and she's always coming down for vacations, and she's coming for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I didn't like her. She was like really goth and, really sarcastic and everything. Right. And she just reminded me of me. She was so individualistic and so none of you understand anything kind of a person that she really got under my skin. And I said some things to her that an uncle does not say to a niece in drunken stupors, right? So I put my 8-step card together. I call her up, I make an appointment, and I'm direct with the harms that I'm clear on. And I basically say to her this, I talk about all the harm. These are the harms I'm clear on. Have I left anything out? I always ask that because I'm a blackout drinker, and give her a chance to come up with some other things that I did that were harmful. Do you need to tell me how any of that made you feel? And give her an opportunity to vent. And then the third question I ask is, what do I need to do to make it right? What do I need to do to make it right, to be the kind of uncle that you deserve? And I listen very, very carefully. And if it's possible, I do that. But I did those amends. And 6 months later, she was on a psych ward. She had overdosed on LSD, and she was on a psych ward, and she was freaking out. And guess who she called? She didn't call her mother. She didn't call her father. She didn't call her friends. She called me because she thought that I would be able to understand. And I was able to convince her to go into therapy. That's really what she needed. She wasn't a drug addict or an alcoholic. She just made a huge mistake, and it caused all kinds of psychic trauma to her. So I was able to encourage her to get professional help which she stayed with for 15 years. Right now, she's a senior executive at a software company making ridiculous amounts of money with an apartment in Manhattan. and she's and my brother had a fall, and he's in a rehab, and she wants to come out and visit him, and she calls me up to pick her up, and we're going to go together. And that relationship has been, not only has it been healed, I'm one of the most important family members in her life, and she's one of the most important family members in my life, because her mother's gone now, her father's gone now. You know, I'm the one left standing. And she comes out for Thanksgiving, and she comes out for Christmas, and that's just one
Yeah.
example of what God has in store for us if we are willing to engage in this applied experiential spirituality called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's great, Chris. All right. So, in terms of 8 and 9, let's put a bow on this, if you will. As you know, there's a lot of folks that are listening to you out there. What do you want to say about these 2 steps, possibly just to summarize it, and to give people some, I guess, encouragement in this arena, or just share your experience, strength, and hope?
All right, these 2 steps are specifically about power, and they're about freedom. So the power that it offers us is a connection to the spiritual core. And the spiritual core does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Many of us call that spiritual core God. So it's about the power to be where you need to be, doing what you need to be doing, comfortably doing it. All right. So it's about power. The freedom that it offers is we can hold our head high everywhere. We can go back to high school reunions. We can give presentations in front of boards of directors. We have the freedom from self that you get from these 2 particular steps. And the question I want to leave everyone is this: how free do you want to be?
How free do you want to be? In other words, are you willing to do the work that it takes in order to be free? And when you say free, like an internal sort of freedom, right?
Free from the bondage of self.
I get it. I get it. That is absolutely fantastic. How free do you want to be? Mr. Chris S., as always, I've enjoyed this. Let me go ahead and read from, and I don't want you to be late picking up your niece there.
Yeah.
I'm going to read from
I'm going to
page
need to leave
164
in a few
of the
minutes,
big
but
book.
go ahead.
It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows, much of what we were just talking about right there. Clear away the wreckage of your past, the same thing. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Chris S., as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. once again, my friend. So good to see you again. We'll be following up with steps 10 or 10, 11,
That's
and
going to be
12 at
fun.
some point.
Yep.
And we'll talk about getting you on the schedule again when we're done here. Okay. God bless you, my friend. As always, Mr. Chris S. knocks it out of the park. Just love having Chris S. on, and we're going to have to get him back. I don't think I have him on the schedule yet. This is reminding me I need to get him back on for a 10 or steps 10, 11, and 12, just to kind of wrap up the steps here. But we always get a lot of new listeners at the beginning of the year, so I'm going to go over some basics here. First of all, if you want to join our super secret Facebook group, we are at, that's probably not proper grammar, but you get the idea. We are, you go to your Facebook application, you search up Sober Speak Secret Group, and you ask for admission into that group, and we will, the bar is very low, but we would love to have you on in there if you want to join us. If you're not following us on La Instagram, it's at Sober Speak, all one word. And I think it's, I should really go back to the old Twitter thing. It's not even Twitter anymore. I think it's X. And so I just never figured out what to do with it, but I may revive it here soon. I don't know, but it's Sober_Speak on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it nowadays. And if you want to write me, I would love to hear from you. You want to, give me some comments about Chris and what you heard from him or any of the other guests. Or if you're out there and there's somebody in your life who has provided you inspiration, maybe it's your sponsor, a counselor, a loved one, whoever hung in there with you during the bad times, and they were kind of a what do they call them? Eskimo for you. And you want to write in something and, just have them hear their influence on you via the airwaves. I would love to hear from you. I'm at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. Oh, and we're also on what do you call it? Pinterest. And that's at SoberSpeak as well. So we would love for you to follow us there. We got a lot of information on there. When I say us, by the way, I monitor all the direct messages on the various platforms that we're on. But the one and only Cassandra. I always say that name wrong. I used to say Cassandra, but now I'm saying Cassandra, and I have to catch myself every time. Between her and the lovely Mrs. M, they're posting this stuff all the time. I'm not a big social media guy, but they do a fantastic job there. Like I said, I'm the one who monitors all the message, but they're putting out a lot of good content there. And we would love for you to follow us on those platforms. All right. Now on to a little bit of listener feedback. Jeremiah writes in, and in fact, here it is. He says, secret Facebook group. He says, hey, John, can I please be added to the Facebook group? I just relapsed, and your podcast is the only distraction I get from my crazy thoughts. I have 3 days sober now and a sponsor. Well, as you know, Jeremiah, I emailed you back and told you how to get into the Facebook group. And, but these are the kind of things that, like I said, just keep me going, to know that there are people out there 3 days sober, and my silly little podcast can provide some sort of respite from the Grand Central Station going on up in their head. I know I still have it, right? It's not like it's completely disappeared, but when I was first sober, man, anything that I could have done to relieve that obsessive compulsiveness going on in my brain would have been very helpful. And my friend, hope you keep us in hope you keep in touch with us, Jeremiah, regarding your journey, and we're glad to have you in the Facebook group and anyone else who wants to join. Adrian writes in, Adrian, and he says, Don Juanito, what he calls me. Don, oh gosh, I can't even remember how this came about. Somebody called me Don Juan one day, And I don't know. I had all kinds of questions about it. I just ramble. Can't remember what I said when I said it. But then Adrian, I believe, came up with Don Juanito at the time. And I had to ask, well, wait a second. Is Juanito like a female? Like, oh, what is it? You know, all the O's and A's and all that sort of stuff. But he explained it to me. Anyway, he said, just kidding, big smiley faces. Oh, no. He says, Don Juanito, hope my email finds you preparing the next podcast. Well, it's not the first time I've seen it because I had to get ready to read, but it was pretty close here, Mr. Adrian. He says, I just want to wish you a successful 2025, a lot of health and whatever you wish for yourself and your family. I remember you shared in one of your podcasts, one of the episodes, that you don't really enjoy Christmas time and all the preparation. Well, welcome, brother. Welcome in the club. But it came to an end. The AA meetings will resume in some days. A new podcast will be on the air Friday. Long story short, thank you, John, for your service. It is a blessing. A happy new year, and God bless you, my friend. Adrian. Well, you're welcome, Adrian. And by the way, I want to clarify. I actually love the Christmas time of year. I like the songs. I like the music. What I don't like sometimes is actual Christmas Day. I don't know why I struggle with it, all the presents and all that stuff, and making sure that I get the right thing for the right person and all that. That's what I struggle with. But overall, though, I really like the Christmas season. So that's about it. All right, everybody, that is episode number 379 in the can. I am trying to think how to end this. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I take this 1 week at a time, and I hope to be back next week for episode number 380, I guess that'd be, right? Yeah, John. 379 plus 1 is 380. You got it there, you old math whiz, John M. Anyway, we'll be back next week, hopefully with 380. And may God bless you and keep you until then. Be well, everybody.